Her robot protector shut down in the storm. Then a stranger offered shelter. Shattered systems, Nara Voss trudged through the thickening snow, each step a battle against Terrace Prime's merciless winds. The mining colony planet had been abandoned years ago when the ore veins ran dry, but independent surveyors like her still came searching for overlooked deposits. Tonight she regretted that decision. "Razi, how much farther to the shelter?" she called over her shoulder. The sleek droid following behind her flickered its amber optical sensor. "Approximately 4.7 kilometers, Nara. However, my weather sensors indicate the storm front is accelerating. Probability of reaching shelter before peak intensity, 32%. Nara pulled her thermal hood tighter. "Then we'd better move faster." She'd found Razi half buried in a scrap heap 3 years ago, a discarded security model with unexpected personality subroutines. Something about his quirky, logical demeanor had compelled her to repair him rather than salvage his parts. Now, he was her only companion in the vast emptiness of the outer colonies. "My internal diagnostics show temperature fluctuations in my primary core," Razi reported, his metallic voice wavering slightly. "The extreme cold is affecting my thermal regulation." Nara glanced back with concern. "Can you reroute power from non-essential systems?" "Already implemented. However..." His sentence cut off as a blinding flash split the sky. The electromagnetic pulse from the storm hit before Nara could react. She was thrown forward into a snowdrift as the world turned white-hot around them. Her ears rang with the aftershock and the smell of ozone filled her nostrils. When she managed to push herself up, spitting out snow, she saw Razi frozen mid-stride, his optical sensor dark. "Razi?" Panic edged into her voice. "Razi, system check." No response. The droid stood immobile, a silent sentinel in the growing blizzard. Nara scrambled to his side, brushing accumulating snow from his frame. She located his manual diagnostic panel and pried it open with numb fingers. The readout was grim. Complete system failure. No. She couldn't carry him and she couldn't leave him. Razi wasn't just equipment. He was her friend, her family in this lonely life she'd chosen. The wind howled louder, driving ice crystals like tiny needles against her exposed skin. Her survival training screamed at her to find shelter immediately. But where? The nearest outpost was still hours away. Through squinted eyes, she scanned the barren landscape. Nothing but snow-covered rock formations and, wait, a faint glow, barely visible through the white curtain of the storm. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and warm. "That's not on any of my maps," she muttered. Survival instinct warring with loyalty, Nara made a quick decision. She detached Razi's central memory core, a small disk that contained his personality matrix, and secured it inside her thermal jacket. Then she marked their location on her tracking device. "I'll come back for you," she promised the silent droid, patting his cold metal shoulder. "Just as soon as I can." The journey toward the mysterious light nearly broke her. Twice she fell, once into a hidden crevasse that tore her thermal pants and left her leg bleeding. The cold was so intense it burned, transforming her fingers and face into senseless appendages. When she finally reached the source of the light, she could barely comprehend what she was seeing. A small structure built into the side of a cliff, windows glowing with actual firelight. Impossible. Nobody lived on Terrace Prime anymore. With the last of her strength, Nara pounded on the door, leaving bloody smears from her raw knuckles. "Please," she whispered, as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. "Please be real." The door cracked open, spilling golden warmth into the night. A man's silhouette appeared, tall and wary, framed by the light behind him. "Help me," Nara managed before her legs gave way. "My droid." The storm. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground and a gruff voice muttered, "Damn fool, surveyor. What are you doing out in a Category 5? As consciousness slipped away, Nara clutched the memory core hidden against her chest and thought only of Razi, standing alone in the endless white. Sanctuary and shadow warmth. That was the first sensation that returned to Nara as consciousness flickered back. Then pain, sharp, stinging pain in her extremities as circulation returned. She opened her eyes to find herself wrapped in thermal blankets before a crackling fire in a small, cluttered room. "The thawing hurts worse than the freezing," said a voice from the shadows. "But it means you'll keep your fingers and toes." Nara jerked upright, instantly alert, then winced as her frozen muscles protested. She found the source of the voice, a man sitting at a workbench across the room, his back to her. His dark hair was pulled into a careless knot, and his broad shoulders were hunched over something he was examining. Razi's memory core, she gasped, patting her chest where she'd secured it. Looking for this? The man turned, holding up the small disc. His face was all angles, sharp cheekbones, a straight nose, and a jawline darkened with several days' stubble. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his chin, pulling slightly at the corner of his eye. Don't worry, I haven't tampered with it. Though I must say it's an impressive piece of tech. Nara struggled to her feet. Give it back. Easy. He raised his hands in a placating gesture. It fell out when I was treating your frostbite. I was just assessing the damage. He placed the disc on the table between them. I'm Darian, by the way. Darian Kelso, Nara Voss. She snatched up the memory core, cradling it protectively. Thank you for not letting me die out there. Darian's mouth quirked into something not quite a smile. Couldn't very well leave you on my doorstep. Bad for property values. The joke fell flat in the tension between them. Nara looked around the room. It was clearly part of a larger structure with passages leading off in several directions. Makeshift shelving lined the walls, crowded with equipment, spare parts, and books, actual physical books, a rarity in the colonies. What is this place? She asked. And what are you doing here? Terrace Prime was declared uninhabitable 3 years ago. That's why I'm here. Darian turned back to his workbench. No neighbors, no corporate oversight, no questions. He didn't elaborate, and Nara didn't press. Everyone in the outer colonies had secrets, reasons for choosing isolation over the comparative comfort of the inner systems. She'd never met anyone who'd gone quite this far off-grid, though. My droid, she said instead. He's still out there. I need to go back for him. Darian glanced toward a small window where the storm continued to rage. Not in this, you don't. This is the leading edge of a polar shift. It'll last at least 3 days. 3 days? Nara's voice cracked. Razi can't survive that long in these temperatures. His molecular structure will degrade. Your droid is probably already beyond salvage, Darian cut in. But that memory core isn't. And considering it's a military-grade security model with illegal emotional subroutines, I'd say you got out with the most valuable part. Nara stiffened. How did you... I recognize the architecture. He nodded toward the disc in her hands. I used to work for Axiom Systems before they went bankrupt. Designed emotional intelligence matrices for specialized service units. An awkward silence fell between them. Nara's thoughts raced, torn between gratitude for her rescue and suspicion of this stranger who knew too much about Razi's restricted tech. You should rest, Darian finally said, standing. The guest quarters are down that passage. There's a sonic shower if you want to clean up. Food synthetics in the kitchen can make something passable if you're hungry. And then what? Nara asked. Darian shrugged. And then we wait out the storm. His eyes, gray as the Terrace Prime sky, met hers. Unless you'd prefer to make another attempt at freezing to death? Nara clutched the memory core tighter. Why help me? You obviously came here to be alone. Something flickered across Darian's scarred face. A shadow of old pain, quickly masked. Let's just say I've seen enough death on this planet. Even adding one more to the tally seems excessive. With that cryptic statement, he left her alone by the fire, disappearing down one of the corridors. Nara sank back onto the makeshift bed, exhaustion overwhelming her again. She cradled Razi's memory core against her chest like a talisman, whispering, I'll find a way to bring you back, I promise. But as sleep claimed her, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd traded one kind of danger for another. The storm outside for the mystery of the man with knowing eyes and a hidden past. Circuit memories. By the second day of the storm, the confines of Darian's outpost had become both refuge and prison. Nara paced restlessly, checking the meteorological readings on his outdated equipment hourly, as if her vigilance might somehow speed the storm's passing. It won't move any faster with you glaring at it, Darian commented, not looking up from the circuit board he was soldering. The acrid smell of melting metal filled the workshop where they'd spent most of the morning. I know that, Nara snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. Sorry, I'm just worried about Razi. Darian set down his tools and turned to face her. Tell me about him. Not the specs, I can see those. Why do you care so much about a droid? Nara hesitated, unused to sharing personal details with anyone, let alone a stranger. But something about Darian's direct gaze made evasion seem pointless. I found him in a scrap heap on Velon Station. His previous owner had tried to wipe his memory after some kind of security breach, but it was only partial. He remembered fragments, enough to be afraid. She smiled faintly at the memory. When I reactivated him, the first thing he asked was if I was going to hurt him. "And you kept him instead of resetting him," Darian observed. "He was broken but alive somehow. I couldn't bring myself to erase what made him unique." Nara ran her fingers over Razi's memory core, which she kept in her pocket. "We've been together ever since. He saved my life a dozen times over." Darian nodded slowly, then surprised her by saying, "I had one like that once. A prototype companion model named Mira. She was special." "What happened to her?" His expression darkened. "Axiom systems happened. When they realized how advanced her emotional responses had become, they wanted to study her, dissect her. I refused, so they took her by force." His hands clenched into fists. "By the time I found her again, they'd wiped everything that made her Mira." Understanding bloomed between them in the quiet that followed. Nara crossed the room and sat beside him at the workbench. "That's why you're helping me with Razi. And why you're here, isn't it?" Darian didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached for a storage container beneath the bench and pulled out a device Nara didn't recognize. "I've been developing this," he said, placing it between them. "It's a quantum neural stabilizer. Theoretically, it could repair degraded memory matrices after catastrophic system failures." Nara's breath caught. "Could it help Razi? Even if his physical body is damaged beyond repair?" "Possibly. It's experimental." His fingers traced the device's contours. "I've never had a reason to test it. Until now." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. A shared purpose, perhaps, or simply recognition of a kindred spirit. Two people who understood what it meant to find family in circuitry and code. "Show me how it works," Nara said softly. The next hours passed in a blur of technical collaboration. Darian explained the stabilizer's functions while Nara contributed her practical knowledge of droid repair. They worked seamlessly together, anticipating each other's needs, finishing each other's sentences. Occasionally, their hands would brush, and Nara found herself increasingly aware of his proximity, the subtle scent of him beneath the workshop smells. As evening approached, they took a break. Darian synthesized a meal that was surprisingly palatable, spiced protein with vegetables from his small hydroponic garden. "So," Nara ventured as they ate, "what's the real story with this place? It's too well equipped to be a simple hideout." Darian considered her for a moment, then said, "It was a research outpost before the evacuation. I was stationed here with a team studying Terrace Prime's unusual magnetic fields. When the company pulled out, I stayed. For 5 years, alone." Nara couldn't hide her disbelief. "Sometimes solitude is the only peace we can find." His eyes held hers. "But I admit it's been a long time since I've had a conversation that wasn't with my equipment." The confession hung in the air between them, unexpectedly intimate. Nara found herself studying the lines of his face, the way the scar pulled slightly when he spoke, the intelligence in his gray eyes. "I know what you mean," she said quietly. "Before Razi, I went months sometimes without speaking to another living soul. And yet here we are," Darian said, his voice dropping lower, "talking like old friends." "Are we friends?" Nara asked, surprised by her own boldness. Darian's mouth curved into a genuine smile, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hardness there. "I think," he said carefully, "that we could be more than that, if the storm lasts long enough." Heat crept up Nara's neck, and she looked away, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how long it had been since she'd felt this kind of connection with anyone. The moment was broken by a loud beep from the workbench. They both turned to see Razi's memory core pulsing with a faint blue light. "It's responding to the stabilizer," Darian said, excitement threading through his voice. "Come on, we might actually have a chance to save your friend." As they rushed back to work, their fingers entwined briefly, almost by accident. But as Nara looked up into Darian's eyes, she knew with sudden clarity that nothing about their meeting had been accidental at all. Midnight confessions. The blue glow from Razi's memory core bathed the workshop in ethereal light as Nara and Darian worked through the night. Their earlier breakthrough had led to hours of painstaking code reconstruction, attempting to repair corrupted memory segments. Now in the quiet hours before dawn, They'd reached an impasse. The emotional subroutines are too deeply integrated with his base programming, Darian said, rubbing his tired eyes. If we try to untangle them, we risk erasing what makes him Razi. Then we don't untangle them, Nara insisted. We build around them, strengthen the connections instead of separating them. Darian smiled at her determination. That's not standard protocol. Neither is living alone on an abandoned planet, she countered, returning his smile. He laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to surprise even him. Fair point. He stretched, wincing as his back cracked. We should take a break. Fresh eyes might help. Nara nodded reluctantly, setting down her tools. The storm still raged outside, but its howl had become almost comforting, a constant reminder of why they were here. Together in this moment, Darian disappeared briefly, returning with a dusty bottle and 2 glasses. Synthetic whiskey. Not great, but it does the job. Are you trying to get me drunk, Darian Kelso? Nara asked, accepting the glass. Would it work if I were? There was a playfulness in his tone she hadn't heard before. She took a sip, grimacing at the burn. You'd have to do better than this, Will. They settled on the floor before the fire, backs against the worn couch. The whiskey warmed Nara from the inside, loosening something tight in her chest. In the firelight, Darian's scar looked less harsh, more like a story written on his skin. How did you get it? She asked softly, gesturing to her own face to indicate the scar. Darian's fingers traced the jagged line reflexively. Equipment explosion during the evacuation. I stayed behind to download research data while everyone else fled. Almost didn't make it out. And yet you came back. This place was home by then. He stared into his glass. After Mira. After what they did to her, I couldn't work for the corporations anymore. Couldn't trust them. So I came back here where no one would look for me. To hide. At first, he met her eyes. Later, to heal. To remember who I was before they took everything. The simple honesty of his words touched something in Nara. She found herself sharing her own story. How she'd lost her family in the Velon Station riots. How she'd chosen a nomadic life afterward, afraid to put down roots that could be torn away again. Razi was the first real connection I allowed myself, she admitted. Ironic, isn't it? The first being I trust completely isn't even human. Sometimes I think droids understand loyalty better than we do, Darian said. They don't have our complications. Our fear, you mean? Yes. His voice grew softer. The fear of loss, of pain, of letting someone close enough to see all the broken parts. The air between them seemed to thicken. Nara was acutely aware of their shoulders touching, the subtle shift as Darian turned toward her. You see them, don't you? He asked so quietly she almost didn't hear. The broken parts. Instead of answering, Nara reached up to trace his scar with gentle fingers. Darian's breath caught, but he didn't pull away. His skin was warm beneath her touch, alive with stories and scars, both visible and hidden. We're all broken somewhere, she whispered. That's how the light gets in. Darian's hand covered hers, pressing her palm against his cheek. The gesture was achingly tender, a question asked in the language of touch. Nara answered by leaning forward, closing the distance between them until their lips met. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Darian's arms wrapped around her, drawing her closer. She tasted the synthetic whiskey on his tongue, felt the slight roughness of his stubble against her skin. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads touching. Darian's eyes searched hers, seeking permission, assurance. Are you sure? He asked. Nara's answer was to kiss him again, more urgently this time. Years of solitude and carefully maintained distance melted away under his touch. His hands moved along her back, tracing her spine with reverent fingers as if memorizing her shape. They made their way to Darian's quarters, shedding layers of clothing and reservation with each step. In the dim light, their bodies found a rhythm older than words, a conversation of skin against skin, breath mingling, hearts synchronizing. Afterward, lying tangled in his sheets, Nara traced lazy patterns on Darian's chest. The storm outside had quieted somewhat, matching the peaceful silence between them. What happens when the storm ends? Darian asked eventually, voicing the question they'd both been avoiding. Nara propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. I don't know. I need to find Razi or what's left of him. And then? Then? She hesitated, suddenly afraid of the possibilities opening before her. I hadn't thought beyond that. Darian's fingers combed gently through her hair, You could stay. Here, with me. The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. The outpost has enough resources for two. More if we're careful. You'd give up your solitude? Just like that? It hasn't felt like solitude since you arrived, he admitted. It's felt like coming home. The simple truth of his statement brought unexpected tears to Nara's eyes. She laid her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Strong, steady, certain. Let's get Razi back first, she said. Then we'll talk about home. Darian's arms tightened around her as they drifted toward sleep, their breathing falling into sync. Outside, the storm continued its slow retreat, revealing glimpses of stars through breaking clouds. Recalibration dawn broke with unexpected brilliance over Terrace Prime as the storm finally dissipated. Nara stood at the window, watching sunlight transform the snow-covered landscape into a glittering expanse of white. The air held that peculiar stillness that follows great storms, a world holding its breath, assessing the damage. It's beautiful, Darian said, joining her. His arm slipped around her waist, a gesture that already felt natural. Deadly, but beautiful. Like most worthwhile things, Nara replied, leaning into his warmth. They'd spent the early hours completing their work on Razi's memory core. The stabilizer had performed beyond expectations, repairing neural pathways and strengthening fragile connections. Now the core sat on the workbench ready to be tested. We should go now while the weather holds, Nara said. My tracker says Razi is about 3 hours from here on foot. Darian nodded, his expression serious. I've prepared some equipment that might help depending on his condition. He hesitated. Nara, you should be prepared for what we might find. 3 days in those temperatures, I know. She squeezed his hand. But we have to try. They set out across the frozen wasteland following Nara's tracker. The journey was arduous despite the clear skies. Deep snowdrifts and treacherous ice patches slowed their progress. But Darian knew the terrain better than any map, guiding them along hidden ridges and stable paths. 2 hours into their trek, they crested a rise, and Nara's breath caught. In the valley below, a dark shape was visible against the white. Razi, exactly where she'd left him, now partially buried in snow. There. She pointed, her voice breaking. They scrambled down the slope, half-sliding through the deep powder. Nara reached Razi first, frantically brushing snow from his metal frame. The droid stood frozen in mid-stride, optical sensor dark, extremities encased in ice. Help me clear him, she called to Darian, who was already unfolding a portable heat shield. Together, they carefully melted the ice from Razi's joints and access panels. Darian's expertise proved invaluable as he assessed the damage to the droid systems. The main power cell is completely drained, he reported, and there's significant damage to his thermal regulation system. But his primary processors seem intact. He looked up at Nara. It's better than I expected. Hope flared in Nara's chest. Can we restart him? Not here. We need to get him back to the outpost. Darian unfolded a collapsible sled from his pack. Help me get him on this. The return journey was slower, both of them straining against the weight of the droid on the sled. By the time they reached the outpost, the short winter day was already fading toward dusk, and exhaustion had set in. In the workshop, they positioned Razi carefully before beginning the delicate process of replacing his memory core. Darian connected a power source to the droid's auxiliary input, bypassing the damaged systems. Ready? He asked, hovering over the activation switch. Nara nodded, throat tight with anticipation. Darian flipped the switch. For several agonizing moments, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, a faint hum began to emanate from Razi's chassis. His optical sensor flickered once, twice, then glowed steadily. Razi? Nara whispered. The droid's head tilted slightly. Nara Voss, you are safe. His voice sounded strained, mechanical processes audibly struggling. Yes, she said, tears blurring her vision. Thanks to Darian. He helped me find you. Razi's sensor focused on Darian. I detect modifications to my memory architecture, superior workmanship. Thank you. Darian inclined his head. You have a remarkable design, and a remarkable friend. Over the next hours, they worked to stabilize Razi's systems. Many of his physical components would need replacement, but his core, the essence of who he was, remained intact. As night fell, the droid entered a recovery mode, his processes humming quietly as self-repair protocols engaged. Nara and Darian sat at the kitchen table, cups of synthetic coffee cooling between them. "What will you do now?" Darian asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Nara stared into her cup. "There's a settlement on Eridani that might have the parts we need for Razi. My ship should still be operational at the landing site, and so you're leaving." It wasn't quite a question. "I didn't say that." She reached across the table for his hand. "I said we need parts." Darian's eyes met hers, cautious hope dawning in them. If your offer still stands." Nara's heart pounded. "About home." "It stands," he said softly. "But Nara, I've been alone a long time. I can't promise I'll be good at this." He gestured between them. She smiled. "Neither can I. But I'm willing to try if you are." In the workshop, Razi's optical sensor brightened momentarily as if listening. His vocal processor activated softly. "Emotional subroutines indicate approval," he murmured to the empty room. The next morning, they stood together at the outpost entrance, watching the twin suns of Terrace Prime rise over the snowfields. Nara's ship was prepped for the journey to Eridani, with Razi secured in the cargo hold. Darian had packed essential equipment and research data, the work of 5 solitary years. "Are you sure about this?" Nara asked, giving him one last chance to reconsider. "Leaving your sanctuary?" Darian looked back at the outpost, then at her. "I came here to hide from the world," he said, "to lick my wounds in private. But you showed me something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That healing doesn't happen in isolation." He touched her cheek gently. "It happens in the spaces between people. In connection." Nara turned her face to kiss his palm. "Speaking of connection, Razi mentioned something interesting during his diagnostics this morning." "Oh?" "He said there might be enough salvageable code in his archives to recreate a basic emotional matrix. Not Mira exactly, but..." Darian's expression shifted through disbelief to wonder. "A foundation," he whispered. "Something to build on." "Something to build on," she agreed, entwining her fingers with his. Together. They boarded the ship, leaving footprints in the pristine snow, temporary marks soon to be erased by the planet's endless winter. But as Terrace Prime receded below them, its icy surface gleaming in the starlight, Nara knew some marks couldn't be erased, like the impression of Darian's body against hers, the memory of his voice in darkness, the feeling of finding connection in the most unexpected place. In the cargo hold, Razi's systems hummed contentedly as the ship broke atmosphere, carrying them toward an uncertain future, but one they would face not alone, but together. As the stars welcomed them back, Nara smiled at the thought that sometimes the greatest storms bring the most unexpected gifts. A broken droid, a scarred hermit, and a surveyor who'd finally found something worth more than all the precious minerals in the galaxy: home.